So let's get started talking about loops in Svelte. Now, if you're a front-end developer, looping through an array of elements and outputting the values to the page is probably one of the most common tasks that you're going to do on a day-to-day basis. So this is a pretty important thing to learn how to do in Svelte. So here I am in VS Code. I've already got a Svelte project up and running, and I'm in my app.svelte file. So the first thing I'm going to do is simply open up a pair of script tags because I want to create an array that we can work with. So let's create an array of instruments, and we'll put some instruments in there. Let's put piano and guitar, and we'll put a bass. Now, how do we output this to the page? Well, what we have to do is create what's called an each block, and this is the syntax. So we do a pound and we use the keyword each, and then after that we follow that with the name of the collection that we want to iterate over. In this case it's called instruments, right? That's our array. Then we follow that with the keyword as, and then finally we're going to put the name that we want to give to each iteration. So the convention, if instruments is our collection, is to call each iteration an instrument. And then before we output that to the page, we'll close off our each block. And then in between here, we can output our instrument. And we can dress it up however we want. In this case, we're kind of creating a list, so I think it makes sense to create it as a list item. So within our list item tags, we're going to interpolate the instrument. Now if I save and we look at the page, we can see our instruments in a list: piano, guitar, and bass. So now what if also, besides just simply displaying the name of the instrument, we also want to display its number in the list? So let's see how we can do that. Svelte gives us a way to do that very easily. All we have to do is we have to put a comma, and then we can create a name for that index. So some conventions might be to simply call it I, or we can call it index. I like to call it IDX for short. And now we have access to the index on each iteration, and we can output that index to the page. So I can put in curly braces that IDX, and just to make it look a little bit nicer on the page, let's put a hyphen, and we'll save, and now we can see we get 0, 1, and 2. And of course it starts with 0 because arrays are 0 based, or they start with 0. So to make it a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more human readable, remember, inside of the curly braces, we can do any JavaScript that we like. So let's do +1, index +1, and now we get 1, 2, 3, nice and readable. Now here I have a new example for you, and as you can see, our instruments array is no longer just a simple array of strings, it's an array of objects. And each of these objects has a type with the name of the instrument, it has a color with the instrument's color, and also a unique ID. So how do we loop through these instruments and display the type, color, and ID for each of them? Well, if we simply do it the way that we did before, instruments as instrument, what we're going to see is that we get object, object for each iteration. But that's not what we want, right? We want to get each of these property values. So in order to do that, one way we can do it is like this. We can say instrument.type, then we'll do a nice hyphen, and now we can say instrument.color, another hyphen, and we'll do instrument.id. All right, now if we save, now we're getting what we want, all those individual values for each iteration. But as you can see, it's getting a little bit verbose. Imagine especially if we had even more properties on each of these objects. Well, fortunately, there's a shorthand that we can use, and we can do that with what's called object destructuring. So let's see how it works. Let's comment out this line, and instead of saying instrument, what we're going to do is we're going to replace that with a pair of curly braces, and now we're just going to specify the properties that we want to sort of pluck off of each of these objects. So we want to get the type, we want to get the color, and we want to get the ID as well. Now in our markup, we can display the values for each of those properties with a little shorthand like this. We can just refer to type, then we can do color, and finally we'll do ID. And now if we save, you see we get exactly the same result in the browser. The difference being that it's just nicer to read for us as developers here, right? We have this compared to this line that we commented out. Now we're going to look at what I think is a pretty cool feature of Svelte, and that's called the else clause.
Oh, snap.
So what this does is it allows us to display something else in the case where our array is empty, for example. Let's say if we're trying to get our data from an API endpoint or a database or something, and we actually don't get any elements in the array. What we can do in a pair of curly braces, we can say colon and then else, and then here we can output something else to the screen in this case. So in this case, let's output no data to display. Right now, in order to see this, we can actually just comment out all of the objects in our array. And if we look at the page, we see that else clause in action, no data to display. Right, so that's a really nice little convenient feature that Svelte gives us. The next thing that I want to show you is the idea of using keys in an each block. So what a key is a unique identifier that's going to tie the element in a particular iteration to a specific DOM node. Right now, we don't have a key in our each block. And we're going to start in this way just to show how Svelte normally updates the DOM. Let's create kind of a contrived example. We'll create a button and we'll say add instrument. And on this button, we'll use an on directive with a click event type, and we'll assign it to a function which we'll call add instrument. Now let's write that function. Function add instrument. And what this function is going to do, it's going to take the instruments array, and we'll use the unshift method on it to add a tuba into the array as the first element. Now, in order for the DOM to update, we need to reassign our instruments array to the new instruments array with the tuba in it. And if we go to the browser and we click the button, now we see that tuba appears as the first element in the list. Now what you might think is that the piano, guitar, and bass LI elements all got shifted down, and then a new LI element got created with the value of tuba. But without a key, that's not actually what happens. What happens is that the piano LI, which was the first one, got reused. Its value simply got updated. So this LI DOM node is actually the same LI that was used for this piano previously. Just now it has some different text content. And the same thing goes for these two nodes. These are the same LI nodes that were there previously. They just have updated text content. And once the function was run, the length of the array got updated to 4, and a new LI was created and added to the end of the list with the text content of base. To look at this a little bit closer, we can open up our dev tools, and let's go to the Elements tab, and we'll open up this div, and here we see our 3 LIs, which we currently see on the screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click the Add Instrument button one more time, and what I want you to pay attention to is these LIs, and notice which ones flash, because the ones that flash are the ones that have a change occurring in them. So I'm going to click, and what you can see is that all of them flashed. And that makes sense because, as we said, the LIs are simply not just getting shifted, but their values are all changing. So let's look at the difference now when we create a key. So in order to create a key, this is the syntax. We just add a pair of parentheses, and then in here we're going to pass in some kind of unique identifier. Now in this case, we have a simple array of instruments with just 3 elements, and we know that each element in this array is unique. So we can use that element in the array, which is called instrument, as the unique identifier. So now let's save, and we'll once again click on the Add Instrument button, and we'll observe what happens in the Elements panel. So let's click on Add Instrument, and now you can see that only the very first node flashed. So now with the key added, the last 3 elements actually get moved down in the list. A new LI is created for the tuba element and inserted first in the list. So that's the difference between using a key and not using a key. When we provide a key, we're providing a specific unique identifier that Svelte can map to a particular DOM node. And so then when we go to update our array, Svelte can identify all the various DOM nodes and can insert or reshuffle or reorder them in the appropriate way. So if you want to take your web development skills to the next level, check out the Code Creative Store for courses and free content. I'm going to leave a link for you in the description and the comment sections down below. Also, drop me a comment and let me know if you've tried Svelte yet, or if you're planning on giving it a try. See you next time.